It was 5 minutes after midnight. I was away at school. My pastor had just called to tell me my dad had died from a heart attack. He was just 56 years old. My dad wasn't overweight, he wasn't a smoker, and he wasn't a couch potato either. But he made one mistake. He assumed that because he felt good, everything was okay. It wasn't. That one event changed my whole life. It's one of the reasons I do what I do today. Hi, my name is David Meinz, and I'm coming to town soon with a test to help make sure that never happens to you. Whether you know it or not, your odds of dying from a heart attack or stroke are greater than anything else. Atherosclerosis, what they used to call hardening of the arteries, is more likely to be on your death certificate than any other cause of death. Now, don't lose me here. You may think that you and your physician have got this whole cholesterol thing under control. That's what most people think. The truth is, you probably don't. As a man or woman in the United States, the number one threat to your health is cardiovascular disease. In this country, someone dies of a heart attack every minute. One person dies every 4 minutes from a stroke. And it often gets people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, way too early. But it doesn't have to be that way. If you think your physician or cardiologist is up to date on this topic, they probably aren't. That's a bold statement, I know. I'm sure your doctors are good, well-meaning professionals, but most of them are practicing cardiovascular medicine that does not reflect what we now know about preventing the biggest threat to your life. It's important for you to remember that the most common first symptom that you have cardiovascular disease is that you die. Did you hear that? The most common first symptom that something is wrong is that you die. What normally happens is that you feel fine and then you die. You need to take action now so that doesn't happen to you. Look, if you're having chest pains or you've already had a heart attack or stroke, you don't need this test we're bringing to town. We know you have the disease. What we're looking for is the vast majority of people out there who have the disease but don't have any symptoms yet. I'm bringing in a test called the CIMT. That stands for carotid intima medial thickness. This ultrasound test looks at the health of your carotids, those arteries found in your neck. Now, to be clear, this is not the same ultrasound test that you may have done in the past at some health screening. While it may look at the same part of the body, this new application of this technology has only been around a short amount of time. What's important is the software and the degree of training of the technicians that administer the test. This now gives us a far better picture of your future health. Unfortunately, this test is not yet widely available around the United States, even in major cities, even in major medical centers. But we're bringing the test to a location near you. Of course, you already know it's important to lower your cholesterol. You might even know what your number is. By the way, don't celebrate if you've been told it's normal. Did you know that half the people who have heart attacks have normal cholesterols? If all you know is your cholesterol number, you're practicing 30-year-old preventive medicine. If you know your HDLs and your LDLs, don't get too smug either. That's old news as well. Maybe you've also had a treadmill stress test and you passed with flying colors. Good for you. But did you know that that test only reveals a problem when your coronary arteries are at least 50% blocked? 50% blocked. Do you want to wait that long? I don't. Here's the current standard of care. Let's say you're a 50-year-old male, you don't smoke, you have normal cholesterol levels, you eat well, you exercise, and you're not overweight. Your statistical odds of having a heart attack over the next 10 years is about 4%, minimal. Probably not going to happen. Nothing to worry about. But the problem is that prediction is based on a population experience. In other words, if you got a group of 100 people just like you, only 4 of the 100 would be expected to have a heart attack in the next decade. But you are not a population, you are an individual. The current standard that most doctors use to determine your statistical risk is not very predictive of you as an individual. If you have a 4% risk, your physician is just going to congratulate you and tell you to keep up the good work. Yet everyone knows stories of people who did everything right, followed the rules, were healthy, and still died from an unexpected surprise heart attack. You can probably think of someone like that yourself. The normal response to a tragedy like that is, well, I guess you just never know. You just never can tell. I'm here to tell you that that's absolutely wrong. You can tell when a heart attack or stroke is coming, way ahead of time. A heart attack or stroke is not a surprise if you know what to look for. And if you know what to look for, you can prevent it. And that is the point. Of course, if your cholesterol numbers are a little high and you're carrying some extra pounds and you have some other risk factors, your risk may be higher than 4%. Your doctor may put you on a statin drug like Lipitor or Crestor. They may give you a blood pressure medicine, and they'll monitor you. But all this care can result in a false sense of security. Here's why. In spite of these medications and tests, you still don't know what's really going on inside your body. The CIMT test can reveal what's going on inside your arteries long before the most commonly used medical tools can detect it. Do you remember NBC newsman Tim Russert? He was provided with the very best care available. His doctor had put him on a statin for his cholesterol. He was taking blood pressure medicine and aspirin, and he got his cholesterol numbers where his doctor wanted them. He even passed a stress test. Yet he died at work 8 weeks after passing that stress test. He was just 58. How can something like that happen? We used to think that most people that had a heart attack or stroke had one simply because their arteries eventually clogged up. It turns out that only happens in about 15% of the cases. But here's the new information. We now understand that most people that have a heart attack or stroke have open arteries 1 minute before it happens. I'll repeat that. Most people that have a heart attack or stroke have an open artery 1 minute before they have the heart attack or stroke. How can that be? We now understand that the disease called atherosclerosis, that disease starts years before in the wall of the artery itself. The problem is in the wall of the artery, not where the blood is flowing. And here's the main point. Your doctor today, and even most cardiologists today, are not looking at the wall of the artery, they are looking at blood flow. That's what a stress test ultimately is interested in. It looks to see if there's a partial blockage that's keeping the blood from flowing like it should be. But we now know that most heart attacks and strokes happen long before the disease is that far along. This is important because the current standard today only wants to know how your blood flow is doing. If the blood is flowing in your arteries without too much of a blockage, most medical experts don't get too concerned. But they should be. Tim Russert's doctor probably did not look at the anatomy of the artery. Your lumen, the place where the blood is flowing, can be open and you can still be at very high risk. Look, these are not bad people. These are competent medical professionals, but they're using the scientific standards from 10 or 15 years ago. Everyone will be looking at the health of the artery wall itself 10 or 15 years from now. It will become the new standard, but you may not have 15 years for it to become the standard. Many people don't have 15 years to wait for the majority of medical professionals to catch up. That's why there's such a sense of urgency for you to do something about this now. So in this slide, you see a graphic depiction of a cross-section of an artery. In the middle, the hole is where the blood is flowing and would be flowing out toward you from the screen. It's in here, in the artery wall, where the disease starts. You see the hole is completely open and there's no impedance to the blood flow. But if you look closely in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see the disease. There's the plaque just sitting there. And if it should break and spill its contents out into the artery, the body will attempt to fix that by creating a blood clot. And if that blood clot is big enough, you can have an occlusion of the blood flow and a heart attack or stroke. Again, a minute before, you had an open artery. 1 minute later, you have an artery filled up from a blood clot and a heart attack or stroke. On this slide, you see the actual result when the plaque ruptured and spilled its contents into the artery. Notice again that the artery was pretty clean and open before the event. And what causes that plaque to rupture? Please realize that there is only a single cell layer that separates the artery wall from the blood. This endothelial layer can rupture from something called inflammation. And inflammation can come from a number of causes, including stress hormones like cortisol, nicotine, the average American processed diet, not getting enough sleep, a low level of blood vitamin D, and a number of other factors. But by far the greatest cause of inflammation of the arteries are high blood sugar and high insulin levels. And according to the Centers for Disease Control, about half of all adults have that, what's called insulin resistance or prediabetes. About half of all of us have it, and most have no idea. And by the way, the fasting blood sugar or the A1C test you get in your routine blood work are not good ways of knowing if you have this problem. So back to our main point. The bad news is that most doctors today are not looking in the right place for cardiovascular disease. The good news is that you don't have to wait 15 years for this technology to become commonplace. When you come to get the CIMT test done, you will be able to find out exactly where you stand now. And one more thing. Not only is this not easy to find these CIMT tests, if you do find a place that does them, that doesn't guarantee you're getting the kind of quality CIMT test you can depend on. My friend and colleague, Dr. Ford Brewer, is the former director of the postgraduate program in preventive medicine at Johns Hopkins University. Here's a quick comment from him on why the quality of your CIMT test is so important. And by the way, when you hear him mention Todd's group, that's the group that I use for the CIMT test. That's the testing company we're bringing into town for you.
So the vast majority of CIMTs that patients bring in to me are really bad. I think the absolute worst one was last week. A patient brought a CIMT where his local radiologist told him, yes, this is a CIMT. It wasn't even in the neck. It was a lower extremity ultrasound. So it wasn't a media thickness test, and it wasn't carotid. It was awful. And so Michelle and I are continuing to work on ways to get you guys access to better CIMT. As I've said, I've worked with several providers in the country. Todd's group is by far the best. He's developed national access. But why all the problems with the quality of CIMT? That's actually what this video is going to be about. So what is the purpose? What's the goal for a CIMT? It's to help patients visualize what's going on in their arteries. And again, I won't go through the details on this, but you see, going from left to right, you're getting more and more and more increase of the plaque process in your arteries. This doesn't happen in the arteries of the neck and head without happening everywhere else. So I still get patients comment to say, well, that's just in your neck, that's not in the heart. Your arteries are your arteries. They pump the same blood. I mean, every minute blood goes through, can make the trip throughout the whole body. So what's going on in one artery bed is going on in another. So what are the problems with, actually there are more than one problem with CIMT. The biggest one is technologist technique, and it has to do with what I call the problem of perspective. What does that mean? I'll get to that in just a minute. There are other issues as well. Standardization of reporting in the research has led to a bunch of really bad CIMT studies getting into the research. When you look at the groups that do it well, and again, Todd's is not the only group. His is the only one that provides national access. And when you get a good CIMT, it's better than anything else. Because of the problems with the standardization of reporting in the literature, the standards committees looked at the literature and the science and said, this doesn't work. It's not standardizable. Well, it is, again, in the right hands. Now let's go back and talk for a minute about this issue with the problem of perspective. Let me actually go to a picture. This is a photographer obviously creating an optical illusion. It looks like the boys are as big as the Eiffel Tower. They're not, because they are just way, way closer to the camera. So what does that have to do with plaque? We'll go to that in just a sec. But here's the thing to remember. Plaque is not uniform around the circumference of the artery wall. Some of it's thin, some of it's thick. So again, perspective matters. Now, as you begin to look at these, you can get some, again, perspective on this issue. These are cross-sections of arteries. The red part is the muscular layer, the media. The intima is this tiny thin layer here. But then everything in between is plaque. And as you see here, this is liquid plaque. Now, this is fairly uniform, but still, even this one, if you took a cross-section through here, if you're shining the ultrasound waves through here, you get the back end, the opposite side of the artery that you're coming in from. So if the technologist is coming through here, they're going to get this thickness. On the other hand, obviously, if they were coming through here, they're going to get a thicker amount. Now, you don't really have that much ability to mess this up, but you do have some, and it is significant. Look at this artery, for example. Huge amounts of plaque on this side. So, for example, if the wand came in through here, you'd get this much plaque. If it came in through here, you'd get a much bigger amount. And obviously, if it came in through here, you might get much less or nothing at all. And yes, you will routinely see plaques that have been missed. Again, even with the problems with CIMT, if you get a good one, a good high-quality CIMT, it tells you so much more than any other measure that we have. This is just, again, another look at a real live artery, and we'll go in and look at some others in just a second. As you see, this was soft plaque. That's no longer soft anymore. It has broken through the intima layer, and a clot has formed, this black thing. The majority of that clot broke off and went on to cause the heart attack, which killed this patient. But again, as you can see here, this is the media, this clear white looking area. That's the intima, and then so that's the plaque. So much less plaque if you had come in from that side, much more plaque if you came in from over here, and again more plaque if you came in from this perspective. Another artery which again shows a significant variation, and again the potential ways to miss plaque if you're coming in from a CIMT. So again, as you might say, look, this is awful, this is terrible. Let's get back and think about the alternatives. The most commonly used alternative is a stress test. It doesn't see anything at all unless there's over 50% occlusion, and it has up to 30% false positives, over that many false negatives, because 68% of heart attacks occur in people that have less than 50% occlusion. So by definition, those people are going to have a false negative stress test. We say, well, let's go to get a calcium score. As many viewers have pointed out, calcium score measures only calcium. And plaque like this that's soft, that is likely to rupture and cause a heart attack, doesn't have calcium in it. So that would not show at all on a coronary calcium score. Now, to get a little bit more perspective, here's a model of a carotid artery, obviously in a dummy, and you can begin to get a little bit more vision. And as I'm using, obviously, talking about maybe if my hand were the wand, the ultrasound wand. I've trained some in doing these. I'm not very good at doing them. But as you can see, you've got to know exactly which level to get the carotid bulb. You've got to know whether to come in from this side versus this side. And again, that is a significant variation when you begin to think about the variation that you can see in these arteries. Bottom line is, it is not easy to get a good picture of plaque. You've got moving arteries, and that's a problem with things like CTA, computed tomography angiogram. It's also a problem with other other items as well. You've got moving arteries, you've got plaque that is not uniform in terms of its coverage around the circumference of the artery. You've got the fact that arteries in the chest are behind bones, and you've got the fact that blood flow, measuring blood flow, like using something like a stress test, doesn't work because you get plenty of blood flow even though you may have significant amount of plaque, and plaque that can cause a heart attack and stroke. So hopefully that helps you get some more perspective on CIMT, the problems with CIMT, and how those compare to other methods of understanding and measuring screening for plaque.
So this is the test you need now, especially if you feel perfectly fine. Too many people fall through the cracks. Remember, the most common first symptom that you have something wrong with your arteries is that you die. Sudden death is the most common first symptom. We can prevent that from happening to you, but we first have to know what's going on inside your arteries. The test only takes about 10 minutes, and you'll receive the results back in about 3 weeks. You'll also get a 4-page letter from me explaining in plain English what your particular results mean. And finally, you'll then have access to a webinar featuring myself, Dr. Brewer, and Dr. David Wright that goes into even more detail. You'll know the actual status of the health of your arteries, and if necessary, you'll know what to do next. Your investment is $149. And no, insurance doesn't cover this. This is prevention. Isn't it ironic that if you have an actual heart attack or stroke, your insurance will pay $100,000 or more for care, but not $149 to prevent? That's okay. You invest in yourself and let them spend the $100,000 on someone else who never had access to the CIMT. So scroll down on this page and reserve a time slot for your appointment. You have to have a reserved time to get the test. This can be one of the most important tests you'll ever take because it can literally save your life.